Are you a data-driven business? Do you plan to extract and transform data from a number of sources, then load it into one or more repositories? If yes, then PevyGrid, which is an ETL application, is the tool for you. PevyGrid gives you a three-step data management process whereby you can extract data from structured and unstructured data sources, transform this data into a format satisfying the operational and analytical requirements, and load it into a target destination. So let's see how to achieve this using PevyGrid. First, let's log in into the application. To get us started, we need to create a workspace. Workspaces are like folders of portfolios where items such as datasets, users, among others, are managed. So let's create our first workspace. We'll call it sales. So once that is saved, we get to see a page where we will be able to manage our datasets, manage the workspace itself, as well as the users. Our main focus will be on the datasets. Let's import a dataset. Currently, PevyGrid supports import of data from the following sources. Stay tuned for more, or better yet, let us know which new datasets you'd like us to prioritize. Let's start by importing a CSV file. So provide the file that we're going to import. Adjust the name to what we prefer. And on the next step, we get to see a preview of the dataset that we have chosen to import. It has 267 entries, 13 columns. We get to see the first 5 entries and the last 5 entries. We also get to see the data type for each column. So if we are satisfied with the preview, we save the dataset. And from there now we can see, we can get a full picture of the dataset that we have imported. So all the rows, all the entries, we can see them at this point. We can change the page size to see even more entries from our dataset. We can control what we see on the table, say columns. Let's just select the columns that are of interest to us. We know that region is Europe. We can select country, item type. Given that it's sales, let's select the columns that have figures. We can go ahead and even order a certain column, say total revenue, in descending order, and go ahead further and filter, say, the data set by item type. Let's go with household. And the data set now has been filtered by what we have typed here. We are currently viewing our data in tabular format. JSON view is also supported. You can collapse the entries as you look through them. There's also an option to export the dataset. You can export it in CSV format, Excel format, or access the dataset through its REST API. There are a couple of instructions here we need to follow so as to achieve that. So we need to copy the dataset URL that has been provided, then access the user token that is from the manage account page, and make a GET request to the dataset URL with the authorization header in this format as it has been provided. So let's go ahead and try this on Postman. So what I need to do is paste my dataset URL. We are making a GET request and provide the authorization header. And this is the format that is required, and make the request. And voila, here is our dataset. And it's that easy. Now let's get back to PevyGrid, where we are going to explore more dataset operations. So back to our dataset. Looking at our dataset, we need to perform some transformations so that we can draw value out of the data that we have. For example, we can drop a couple of columns, for example, the sales channel and the dates, the columns with dates, and probably add another column where we can get to see the profit that we got from our sales. So how do we do that? We have this icon over here where we can manage our dataset from. Click on it and you get a page where we can do all these transformations. So there is the option to create a new version of our workspace when we're done providing the operations that we need, or just leave it as it is. So let's check that so that we create a new version. Then let's select the operations that we want. We are to exclude a couple of columns. So the columns that we want to exclude are columns to do with the order date and shipment date. You can also do away with the order ID and order priority. Yeah, I think that would be enough. And also the sales channel. That's done. The other thing we want to do is add a column. Yeah, we can add a column. So let's collapse this. We want to add a column, and the name of the column, we're trying to get the profit. So let's call it total profit. And because we are going to define the operations that will be done, it will be a custom one. And the data type expected is number, and operation is difference. And how to do with this is we are going to subtract the total revenue column, and the subtrahend will be the total cost column. Yeah, and that's enough for that. And I think that's enough for the data set that we have. So let's go ahead and save this. So once this is saved, we get to see that the version has increased by 1. So what this means is that version 0 is the old dataset, version 1 is the new dataset that we have created. Let's see what has happened. So our columns have dropped from 13 to 9 because there's a couple of columns that we excluded. Then we added a total profit column, and here it is. So doing transformations on your data is quite simple. We have a couple of operations supported, but feel free to suggest what you'd like us to add to help you transform your data. Let's go ahead and import another dataset. This time round, we will import from owner. So what we need to do here is provide our owner username, password to our account, wait for authentication to go through. Then we get to see the tables that we have in our own account. We only have one, and it's the one that you want to import. I need to provide the dataset name. Let me just copy this and provide it there. And on the next step, we again get to see the number of entries, the columns that we have, first 5 entries, last 5 entries, and data type for each column. And this looks okay, so we save this. And for the dataset that we have imported, there are a couple of extra columns here that we need to do away with. So we'll do that from the Manage Dataset page. We need to create a new version after we do the cleaning of our dataset. So let's select the columns that we need to include in the dataset. So I need country, region, total cost, profit, revenue, the unit cost, unit price, and units sold. We're trying to make this data set look as close as possible to the one that we previously imported. So now we can save this. And once that is saved, we get to see the new data set. The columns have reduced to 8, and we have the columns that we need. If I switch, this is version 1. If I switch to version 0, you'll see the first one that we imported, which had 35 columns and all the columns that we did not need at that moment. And that's how easily to import data using PevyGrid and perform some arithmetic operations, just so that you can eventually draw value out of the data that you have imported. Let's go ahead and explore yet another very key functionality offered by PevyGrid, that is merging of datasets. So how do we merge datasets? We start by providing the name of the dataset once we've done the merging. In the next step, we get to select the base dataset. So let's select the table that we imported as CSV and select the other table that we imported from owner. In our case, we'll not need a reference column. In the next step, we have to do some column mapping because what I noticed is that the table that we import, the dataset that we imported from owner, the column naming was a bit different. For example, in our base dataset where we have a column like unit cost, in that owner table that we imported, we have unit underscore costs. Let me just add another one that is total profit, just like that. And you can add as many as you need. Then on to the next step, get to see a summary of what is going to happen. We have our base dataset, the other dataset that we're going to merge into the base dataset. We don't have a reference column, and this is the column mapping that we're going to do. So once we save this, we expect that the two datasets will be merged. So let's see whether that happened. So we have region that is Europe. If we order this alphabetically, yes, we have merged the Australia data with the Europe data together. And you can get to see the data, the merged data set from this view. And that is a very high level walkthrough of what PevyGrid has to offer so far in terms of extracting data, cleaning the same data, and availing it for insights. The process is easy, and that is what PevyGrid is all about, simplifying the process. Sign up today. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more features.